brought, brought to you by the Nature Conservancy, one of our top level sponsors for the conference. The topic is freshwater resilience, adding rivers and streams into your land conservation work. So our presenters today include Mark Anderson, who directs TNC's North America Center for Resilient Conservation Science, which provides science leadership, ecological analysis, and landscape assessments for conservation efforts across the U.S. He has a PhD in ecology from UNH and has worked as an ecologist for over 35 years, including 31 at the Nature Conservancy. He manages a team of 6 scientists specializing in the spatial analysis of terrestrial, freshwater, and marine systems. He's published widely on climate change resilience, large landscape conservation, biodiversity, and forest dynamics. Barbara Charry worked as a conservation biologist and GIS manager for Maine Audubon for 25 years, prior to joining the Nature Conservancy, first in Missouri and now in Massachusetts. She developed and led Maine's highly successful Stream Smart training program for professionals to reconnect aquatic habitat through road stream crossings designed to benefit fish and wildlife and infrastructure. Arlene Olivero has a master in science and biology from UMass. In her 24 years with TNC, she's focused on large-scale assessments of freshwater systems and is the author of the Northeast Aquatic Habitat Classification. Her research includes stream and lake habitat classification, floodplain modeling, freshwater resilience, and aquatic habitat condition assessments. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark. Is Mark first?
Yeah, I'm first, Rob.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, is that showing and can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for sharing your lunch hour with us. We're psyched to talk about this work, which is pretty new. We've been working on it for years. What we hope to do is stimulate you to think about and give you some tools to really plan how you could incorporate rivers and streams into your land conservation in a way that will actually sustain freshwater biodiversity. So I'll talk for about 15 minutes on the concepts of freshwater resilience and give you some demonstrations of how you can think about it using the Ipswich River, actually. And then I'll pass it to Arlene, who will demonstrate the Resilient River Explorer, which is a web tool we've created. You can access and examine any river in the country and study it for resilience. And then we'll pass that to Barbara, who will talk about some really cool work she's been doing to incorporate freshwater resilience into her conservation planning and thinking for Massachusetts. We hope to have 15 minutes each and then have 15 minutes at the end for questions and discussion. And as we go along, if you have questions, just put them in the chat and we'll let them pile up and then we'll address them at the end. Okay, so I'm sure you're all aware by now, we are in what I call an abundance crisis now. For most of my career in conservation, we've been focused on rare and endangered species, but in the last 10 years, it's become clear that many, many of our common species are now dropping in abundance. And the reasons for this are very clear. They're habitat loss and habitat degradation. Degradation being the habitat is still out there, but it no longer supports, it no longer provides all the resources that fish and wildlife need to raise their families, produce offspring, and thrive. You may not know that while this is happening throughout our terrestrial systems, it's our freshwater systems that are really the most endangered. In the United States, fish, crayfish, and mussels are the most endangered species groups, and that's relatively true globally, with freshwater species being the most threatened taxa in the globe. At the same time, we have a second issue, which is climate change. And in response to climate change is like nothing we've ever dealt with before. It's a change in the ambient conditions of the Earth. And in response to that change, nature has to move and rearrange. And it's well documented that plants and animals are moving at pretty surprising rates, but it's also documented that fish are moving. They're moving northward to cooler waters. They're moving upslope to cooler temperatures. But fish and other aquatic species have sort of a second problem. Their movement is often confined to channels. And in the US, we have fragmented those river systems at a level far beyond anything we've done with our terrestrial systems. So if you look at this map, you can see the growth of dams in the US. In the lower 48 states, we now have over 153,000 dams. And Arlene and I know that intimately because we've just spent time collecting data on all those dams, which you'll hear about. And of course, it's not just a problem for freshwater biodiversity. People need freshwater biodiversity too. That's what regulates our systems. It's what keeps our water clean. We need it for food, and the integrity of our terrestrial systems are tied with our freshwater systems. So about 5 years ago, we launched a large project to define and map freshwater resilience. And I'm going to give you some detail on that, but I really want to credit. We had a large steering committee representing all 48 states, and it's their work and help in developing this that really created a product that I think is something you can really use in your day-to-day conservation work. So we define freshwater resilience as the ability of a freshwater network to sustain biodiversity even as it responds to a changing climate. So we are assuming that the temperature and the water quality is going to change, or the water quantity is going to change. We're assuming things are going to change, and obviously they already are. And the products of our work, there's two real maps that I'll explain as we go forward. One is a map of resilient rivers throughout the whole US. And the other is a map of a resilient and restorable network of biodiversity, of aquatic biodiversity, that if we actually conserved and restored it, it would sustain diversity into the future. So we've got sort of a wall-to-wall resilience map, and then this network of resilient and connected freshwater biodiversity. So in our work, we started with the question, what makes a stream network resilient to a changing climate? And we honed in, after a lot of study and conversations, on two big factors. A large, diverse, connected network in good condition, provides aquatic species with all sorts of options for moving and responding to a changing climate. The second was just ample, unaltered water. Can't get around needing water to have aquatic systems. So what we'll do is we translated those concepts into some pretty cool models that we've packed into this tool. You see here what we called the physical score was the first part, the connectivity and the condition, the network and what condition it is in. And the second part looks at the water, the potential water available, which is an issue really in the West, and then how altered that water is. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through this model, but I'm going to use a real example so you can see how this works on the ground, and you can think about those factors that drive resilience. So I'm going to look at the Ipswich River. I chose it simply because I know this river. I did my master's there. I live near it, and 5 or 10 years ago, I'm not sure I could have answered the question, as you said, is the Ipswich River climate resilient? But now I think we can answer that very positively and even come up with the strategies we need to make it more resilient. So if you don't know the Ipswich River, it's a 35-mile-long coastal river that runs through Ipswich, Massachusetts, connects to the coast. Here it is. And there's a lot of great conservation lands all around here. That picture was from the Mass Audubon Ipswich River Sanctuary. And there's a lot of potential synergies between the land conservation and the aquatic conservation. So let's start by looking at the connectivity from the point of view of the Ipswich River. So the way we talked about connectivity was we first looked at the locations of the dams, of all the dams in the country, and how those dams partition a particular river system. So what you'll see here, here's the Ipswich River, and on the river part, it has 3 dams, and we'll talk about these in a minute. And those 3 dams break the river into 4 what we called functionally connected networks. So a functionally connected network, this large one here, 78,000 acres, that's the area upon which the aquatic species can move around, and we looked at the characteristics of each of these functionally connected networks. We started to call them FCNs after a while for geekiness, I guess. How much temperature diversity is in there, how much habitat diversity is in there, how big is that network? And we started to score each of these networks. So you can see there's 4 networks here. This is the largest. There's a tiny one here around Willowdale State Forest. There's a slightly larger one here. And then there's one at the end that is open to the ocean. Now, I'll point out here, just so you're aware of this, and you can use the tool. I'm doing a lot of this with the tool that Arlene's going to demonstrate. These are not the only dams in this network. There's a lot of very small headwater dams. And these you see these black dots around. We accounted for them differently. We accounted for them as sort of a density function. But you really need to check those out on the ground because we don't have a lot of confidence in their locations. They're probably there, but they may or may not be where those dots are. So for us to measure connectivity, we looked at the big dams that were on the rivers, and then we accounted for the headwater dams through a fragmentation metric. And we scored every functionally connected network, every FCN gets scored for the size of the network relative to the networks around them, in this case around New England, the size of the network, the diversity of habitats and temperatures available, and then that headwater fragmentation. So here you see these 3 score not very well. They score slightly below average, but this one on the end scores good because it's connected to the ocean. So the ocean connection is giving this a good score. So the first thing as a land trust, the first thing you would want to do here is you would want to investigate these 3 dams and see what their situation is. And I've already done this for you. So I'll give you an update here, and you can do this also on the tool. You can look at the remote sensed images. That's what these are showing here. So that first dam, the Ipswich Pond Dam, it is there, but it's not actually a barrier to the Ipswich River. It's on the side, and it's keeping this pond from flowing directly into the river. So this is essentially an error. And on the tool, you can report that error to us, and we will remove that dam. Easiest, cheapest dam you've ever removed. So, but we need you to report those as you start to investigate. The second dam, west of Willowdale, that is a real dam. It's there, but it has a fish ladder on it. And you can find that in the attributes of the dam, but there's also, there's a partnership with 2 Northeast who maintains and monitors this fish ladder, and it is passing fish. So this dam is not really an issue because of it's been ameliorated by this fish ladder. Great. And then the third dam, which you may know about, Ipswich Mill Dam, that is a real dam, but it is slated to be removed. And, it passed votes last year. There's millions of dollars allocated to the removal, and I'm not sure when it actually starts, but this dam is slated for removal. So now you could go back to this first connectivity thing and realize, okay, this one's not there. This one's got a fish passage, and this one is going to come out. So when those things happen, this will actually turn blue, this whole thing, because it'll be fully connected to the ocean. So now we've got our head around connectivity. The next question is condition. I got to speed up. The next question is condition. So the condition score looks at the water quality and the naturalness of the floodplain and riparian area. It looks at that by 12-digit HUC, the small watersheds. And when you look at the Ipswich River, you see here that it actually looks like it's in great condition, the lower part of the Ipswich River. So these areas, these HUCs in blue, are all in good condition. They have good water quality, nice floodplain. This is average. And then when you get up in the upper parts of this watershed, you get slightly below average. And you can explore that. And that slightly below average is because there's just a lot of residential development. You've got impervious surfaces. That's a hard issue to compensate for, but it's, you know, it's the reality. So we know the lower portion of the Ipswich is in great condition. So for the first part of this, large, diverse, connected networks in good ecological condition, now we've got a lot of information, that, once that mill dam comes out, we'll have that diverse connected network, and the lower part is already in great ecological condition. So then you can look at, what about water? The first start is potential available water. Well, that is great. So there's, we're in a very wet part of the country. There is no problem with available water and groundwater for the Ipswich River. So it scores wonderful for available water potential. But the other question is hydrologic alteration. How altered is that water? How much of it is really available for the system? And that's where, once again, you see in the Ipswich, the low scores, because this water is highly altered. You can look at the raw data here. I'm showing in red, but this is based on gauge data, and you see it has low flows. There's a lot of water withdrawals. There might be some issue with dam storage. So this is an area where, to have a fully resilient river, we have to really think about getting the natural flow regime or something better than what we have now. That's, again, a very hard thing for a land trust to do. But once again, there's some great partners out there, like the Ipswich River Watershed Association, which is a group that has already identified, reducing the impacts of water withdrawals, and they've identified hydrologic alteration as a #1 issue they want to focus on. So working with partners, we could probably maybe get that water alteration up to improve that. So now when you look at the resilience score for this areas, I hope you see that this gives you a lot of information, not just how it scores now, but what are the strategies you would need to improve the freshwater resilience of this river. And you can now, using these same tools, you'll see this with Arlene. You can look at any river in Massachusetts or any river in the country and think it out this same way. Here's what the maps look like for all of Massachusetts, and you'll see similar thread here. The condition score and the water availability look great, but the connectivity score and the hydrologic alteration scores are very mixed. We have a lot of dams. Here's the overall resilience score for Massachusetts. You'll see a lot of stuff is in average, the yellow, and in blue above average, and then below average in brown. And those are highly correlated with dams, especially the below average brown areas. So I've got to stop. I just want to end up saying the last thing we did was we dug deep into the average. So those average scores usually mean that it's restorable resilience if we can figure out what it is we need to restore. So in order to get there, we looked closely at where are the places that have important biodiversity, and we used biomap and living waters and TNC eco-regional plans to look at areas, and we identified the places that have average resilience, but they also have critical biodiversity. And those are the places we focused in on what is needed to restore. So that's the green on this map. Restorable resilience and critical biodiversity. which converts to this final map I'll show you. We call it the freshwater network, where we actually went in and looked at the rivers, the rivers that could be the easiest or the closest to resilience if you restored a key condition. And in this case, you see the purple is restoring flow. So the Taunton could be resilient and it has biodiversity, but it needs flow restoration, just like the Ipswich did. The Westfield has some problems with dams, so you need to reconnect parts of the Westfield to get it fully resilient. And this will give you, this network is now available for the country and gives you an idea of where we could really restore and maintain freshwater resilience. So with that, thank you. I'm going to pass it to Arlene Olivero to demonstrate the tool for you.
Okay, great. I think I'm going to go off video just for bandwidth here, but let me share my screen. Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Resilient River Explorer screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, what I would like to do is show you how you can learn about the freshwater resilience of a watershed you're interested in using our Resilient River Explorer. So, and I'll just give a quick shout out of thanks to our amazing web tool developer, Eric Martin, who really programmed and created this tool to really make the data come alive and allow people to really interact with it so beautifully. So let's enter the tool here. And for quick orientation, I just want to point out that on the top left, you'll see our 5 major menus, these key tabs here. And then on the right, I just want to point out up here a few key buttons, this share this map button, which will let you create a URL to save the map view you're looking at. It's really helpful if you want to email that to someone to show them a particular area, or save the URL for yourself to return to the exact view. There's also our user guide and more information. Here you can find links to download the GIS data or provide feedback to us. As Mark was saying here, these feedback forms are really important to us. Also, there's additional project information here, links to our full report, a video tutorial series to learn how to use all the different tabs on our Resilient River Explorer. So I would encourage you to check out these resources. But really, today I want to spend most of my time orienting you to the 5 major menus. So you'll see right now when you enter the tool, you are put into the Elements tab. That tab really provides an introduction to freshwater resilience, and it's a great reference. I'm not going to spend really much time on it because Mark just reviewed these key elements of resilience with you, but it's a great reference if you want to kind of review some of these key concepts. But today, really to learn about a particular river, we're going to start with this Assess a River tab. So just click on that particular tab, and we are going to explore the Westfield River. So there's a search box here. You can type in the name of whatever river you're interested in. So I'm just going to type in Westfield River. And you'll notice the map is going to zoom in to that river. It's going to zoom in really quite far. So I'm going to back out a little bit here so we can see the Westfield River here and its main stem. This is the Connecticut River, and the Westfield's a tributary of the Connecticut. And so if we wanted to assess the Westfield River watershed, what you can do here is just zoom in a little bit and then click on the main stem of whatever river you're interested in. Once you click on it, you'll get this select this river pop-up. And so You just click that, select this river. And once you click on that option, the map will zoom out and show you all the Huck 12 watersheds within the Westfield River watershed, symbolized by their freshwater resilience score. So you can see that here. And it's also going to show you the dams on rivers as black dots, and in the blue outlines, you'll see the FCN that intersect the Westfield River. So you can see there's a number of small functionally connected networks here, and then there's one very large functionally connected network. The lower portion of the Westfield River here that connects to the Connecticut is part of this very large functionally connected network. But I'm going to zoom in a little bit further here to just focus more on the Westfield River, and again, those Huck 12 watersheds that intersect the Westfield. So I want to bring your attention to these summary results on the left. So we have a panel here, which will quickly give you a lot of key information about the Westfield River watershed. So you can read here, there's 11 FCN that intersect the watershed, 19 dams. We also have this section here that summarizes the resilience characteristics. So you can hover over this chart and you can report the exact percentage of the watershed that's falling in any resilience class. Here you can see 59% of this watershed is average, 21% of it slightly above average. You can slide down here and look at the freshwater resilient connected network information. You can turn that on, use this toggle here, turn that on, and you can see these areas that are highlighted in our prioritized network for protection or restoration. You can use this button here to pull down and display the 5-class display, as Mark showed, that gives you a little bit more information about those restore categories and what particular factor is below average and would really need to be restored. So here we can see 33% of the watersheds falling in this reconnect area, restore category. So again, there's a lot of information you can explore just on this Assess a River tab very quickly. I'll just bring your attention here also to this map layers section where we have a few other key layers you can turn on or off. You might be particularly interested in, for example, the secured lands, the conservation lands that are in this watershed. So you can turn those on and see how they overlap. Maybe you're interested in where disadvantaged communities have been mapped. Here you can see at the mouth of the Westfield River here, there's some disadvantaged communities within Springfield that have been highlighted. You can also turn on the underlying freshwater biodiversity layer. As Mark was saying, this was combined with the resilience to come up with our prioritized network, but you can click on any one of these polygons and get more information. You scroll through here, you can see, this little area was part of an ecoregional and state-based freshwater biodiversity priority area. It's also 6 acres as part of the brook trout secure strongholds. So again, a lot of information you can glean at using this Assess a River tab. But, and there's actually also this whole opportunities section, which in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip this, but I would encourage you to explore that as well. And we have these help buttons embedded throughout the tool. You can click on any help button. And for example, at the top, you'll always get a video tutorial about this major section. So you can watch that and you can learn more about the opportunity tab. But I really wanted to also show you how you can use the other tabs here, and particularly how you could really dig into some of the key metrics and source data sets that went into the freshwater resilience score. So to do that, you can use this Explore the Data tab. So let's go there. If you go to this tab, you'll notice that you're still in the same geographic area. Let me just turn on the rivers so you can have that context might help. So we can go down here. On this tab, there's a few more layers here that you can turn on, but let's turn on rivers here again. So Connecticut River and the Westfield River. And so in this section, there's a few key things I want to highlight for you. The first is just that the data that's displayed on the map really corresponds to the topic that you click on in the nested boxes here on the left. So right now there's a black outline around freshwater resilience. So it's showing freshwater resilience. You could click on condition and see those scores for every HUC. You could turn on the connectivity score, flow alteration, potential water availability. So again, you can use these nested boxes here to look at the different metrics for your area. But you might be interested in a particular HUC. And I want to, the second thing I really wanted to show you really was that if you select a particular HUC, I'm going to select this little one here, then you can read a lot of information about this HUC just simply by the colors of the boxes. So here we have the dead branch of the Westfield River. That's the name of this HUC 12. And for this HUC 12, you can see its overall resilience is in yellow there. It's average. Its condition score is above average. Its connectivity score is below average. Its flow alteration is average, and its potential water availability is above average. So it's a quick way to begin to review some of the underlying factors that are driving the overall resilience score for any HUC you click on. Click on a different one here, but we can see how the colors of these boxes change to really represent the scores for that HUC that you're clicking on. And then the third thing I really wanted to point out about this Explore the Data tab are these two toggles, additional metrics and source data. Those two things are really helpful if you want to dig in even further. So once you click on those two things, you can expand any one of these boxes to get to look at more of the input metrics and source data that went into any one of these scores. So for connectivity, for example, to show you quickly, we might be interested, why is this HUC scoring a little lower than the others in the FCN? We actually have this FCN mask on. So I think I forgot to explain, once you click on a HUC 12, there'll be a mask that just shows the HUCs within the FCN that this HUC is located in. So you can turn on or off this mask, but let's just look at this, try to look at the underlying connectivity metrics a little bit more here. So again, for this HUC, you can expand, since you have these two toggles turned on, you can expand and see the input measures. So again, the diversity here is average. It has high temperature class diversity and average stream and lake and pond diversity. For functional connectivity, we can see here the headwater fragmentation is really far below average. So that's dragging the score down. So we can turn on those headwater dams if we wanted to. And again, you can see here these little blue dots. There's a lot of headwater dams in this watershed, and it's kind of cutting off about half of the HUC here from being connected to the lower network. So again, there's really a lot of great information that you can explore using this section. And I would just encourage you to to explore whatever watershed you're interested in. Also remember, there's lots of help buttons embedded here if you want to get more information about any one of these metrics. There's a description, and there's often videos embedded throughout. So I think here with my last couple minutes, I'll just move on to the last two tabs. I wanted to just really briefly touch on our scenario and terrestrial tab. The scenario tab lets you look at dam removals. And we hope to add some other scenarios, but right now it's focused on dam removals. And it's very easy and quick to see the effect of removing a dam on resilience. So I'll just show you that very quickly here. You just click on a dam. So let's click on this Knightsville Dam. And I don't know if you saw the colors change. We can toggle on the before and after results. Before, this area was average resilience. If we select that dam to be removed, then you can see the resilience score getting recalculated with that larger network is making this section turn blue. So you can keep going. You could remove additional dams if you wanted to, and you could see the effect that that larger size of a network is having on the overall resilience score. And again, you can look at kind of before and after. And very last here, I'll show you the terrestrial tab. If you want to explore the relationship of your watershed to some of the terrestrial resilience factors, let me shut that box here. Again, you can look at different geography, the HUC that you selected, maybe the FCN, the functionally connected network that HUC is within. And you can get reports out about a number of our terrestrial resilience factors. And so you can click on these different panels to show the different data, or even expand here if you wanted to look at, if you're interested in forest carbon, for example, and you wanted to get a report on that for your watershed of interest. So I think with that, I will stop, and again, just refer you to, you can always check out, the video tutorials on any of these tabs to learn more, and we hope that this will help people. So I think I can stop sharing. Okay.
All right, Barbara.
There. And now, am I unmuted and can you see my slides? Great. Okay. So thank you, Mark and Arlene. So again, I'm Barbara Charry, Director of Rivers and Lands from the Nature Conservancy in Massachusetts. And now that you've had an introduction to the freshwater resilience concept and the Resilient Rivers Explorer, I'm going to talk from a statewide perspective on about how we're working to conserve freshwater health in Massachusetts and how that's informing our land protection priorities, and where we work on watershed restoration and conservation to benefit freshwater, land, and people. And then I'm going to talk about a specific watershed as an example. And then I just want to give a huge shout out to Jessica Dietrich, who's our GIS manager and has done the heavy lifting for our freshwater mapping and analysis work. So in Massachusetts, we are intentionally integrating freshwater and land in our conservation strategy. What we aim to achieve, our North Star, is to protect and improve the health and resilience of both freshwater and land. And science is really showing us that if we develop our conservation plans starting from freshwater needs, we will get significantly more gains for freshwater than if we start with a terrestrial lens or a land-based lens and then add those freshwater considerations later. But freshwater conservation is complex, and as you can see in the tool and the information that we have brought together, there's a lot of components. And so we're taking a watershed approach, and in order to sharpen our focus, we have 3 priorities, plus integrating connectivity, both terrestrial and aquatic. So we're working to protect headwaters, protect and restore land alongside rivers and streams, reconnect and protect floodplains, and reconnect rivers and streams by removing dams and replacing and upgrading undersized road stream crossings. And protecting and restoring watershed lands and forests and headwaters and alongside our rivers, as we all know, gives us many benefits. It stores the forest carbon, helps with flood resilience, improves water quality, and provides critical high-value habitat for wildlife, both on the land and in the water. And we're looking holistically at the status of the watersheds where we're working and what conservation actions are needed for that watershed for those healthy rivers and lands. So many of you are very familiar, I'm sure, with the Nature Conservancy's terrestrial resilience data and Resilient and Connected Network. And this network is a representative, Mark brought this up, is a representative connected network of climate resilience, biodiverse lands covering 35% of the United States, representing all ecoregions and all geophysical settings. So if we conserve this, this could help sustain biodiversity into the future as it's moving and changing. And this underlying terrestrial resilience data is integrated into Biomap and helps guide land protection priorities in Massachusetts. So this has been out for quite a long time, and it's very useful information. And then, as you've heard, we now have this freshwater resilient and connected network, which is identifying that representative network of rivers and streams and wetlands that, if conserved, could potentially sustain freshwater diversity under changing climate. It's shown here in blue in the simplified version, and we're using it to inform our Massachusetts work and priorities and identify and gain a deeper understanding of the resilience and restoration needs of some key watersheds statewide. So I wanted to go a little deeper. I've turned on the recognized freshwater biodiversity in the Resilient River tool. And the bluish freshwater RCN includes watersheds with both the recognized biodiversity and either above average for freshwater resilience, or could be with one restoration action, such as reconnecting rivers. So Massachusetts has a really rich landscape of freshwater biodiversity, where land protection and these other actions can help protect and restore the health of these systems. Just a little bit more information about what's driving it. Most of these areas were identified for freshwater biodiversity from either state wildlife action plans, the TNC's freshwater portfolio, which are sites identified through ecoregional planning process, which were best examples of rare or endemic species, aquatic species, communities, and all the ecological systems. And also showing up in Massachusetts in these FRCNs are priority areas for potential restoration and protection for alewife, blueback herring, and American shad, as well as brook trout strongholds. We're working in several of these freshwater RCN watersheds, including parts of the Housatonic, Westfield, the Fort River, Merrimack, and Taunton are places where we've been working and are working now. So one of the things I wanted to understand was, if we protect the terrestrial RCN, how much of the freshwater RCN would we also be protecting? So the protected for our freshwater is in blue here, and the terrestrial lands that are protected are in the green, and the darker colors are protected, the lighter colors are unprotected. And so we've also included in this map, just for visual, to see where the RCNs are in the adjoining states, because watersheds that cross state lines are areas we need to work for freshwater resilience as well. So the statewide terrestrial RCN is 44% protected, but the freshwater is only 23% protected. So we have much further to go for the freshwater realm. And while a lot of the freshwater RCN overlaps with terrestrial, only 19% of the terrestrial overlaps with the freshwater RCN. So if we only focus on terrestrial land protection, we'll be missing some key protections for freshwater. According to the report Conservation Status of Natural Habitats in the Northeast by TNC's Center for Resilient Conservation Science, Mark's office, only 8% of rivers and streams in the Northeast have well-protected watersheds and headwaters. So we're falling far behind in our conservation of fresh water. So this map is called the Integrated Protection Index, or IPI. It's for rivers and streams, and it shows us where we have locally protected habitat along segments of rivers and streams. And only the dark green lines have adequately protected watersheds and headwaters. So knowing where there are opportunities to protect land upstream of the headwaters and watersheds of these protected areas, streams, can help us focus our land protection work for the benefit of our waterways. To understand where land protection could have a bigger impact for freshwater, we identified and compiled a set of overlapping values for unprotected and undeveloped land, resulting in over 900,000 acres in Massachusetts. This current draft. It's a combination of the freshwater RCN and the terrestrial RCN upstream of and within the freshwater RCN. And both of them, both the RCNs that are upstream of these locally protected streams as well. And then we also included biomaps, aquatic and wetland cores. So the purple pink colors have the most overlapping values. Turned on the RCN in the red outline so you can see where those areas are. And this is a working assessment. So we're going to be adjusting and incorporating new information such as floodplain priorities in the future. The Nature Conservancy is also committed in our conservation strategy to prioritize equity. To do that, we have to understand where environmental justice communities are and how and where they intersect with our conservation goals. So we mapped the EJ communities in Massachusetts using the state data and identified the Huck 12 size watersheds that overlap with those communities. Those are the crosshatched areas. And as well as the upstream drainages of our smaller rivers for these communities, those are in blue, because the upstream land and protections for both land and water will impact the water quality, the flood risk, the habitat downstream in these communities. The freshwater RCN is in sage green and shows where our conservation priorities overlap with watersheds that, really directly impact and provide environmental services to those communities and can inform where we work and consider equity. So now on to a local example. We just started working to support a new watershed partnership that will be led by the Massachusetts Division of Fish and Wildlife. It's part of the America the Beautiful Challenge grant. The project will improve habitat and corridors as part of the Northeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Appalachian Cross-State Division, enhance critical connections in 3 watersheds, including the Fort, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, and the Mill Rivers, and they're across from each other on the Connecticut River, and the Williams River in Western Mass. And they'll provide critical habitat for numerous imperiled species. Actions are going to include holistic watershed restoration, such as reconnecting rivers and upland habitat, dam removal, culvert upgrades, wetland and upland restoration, and invasive species management. Now, the Fort River watershed, it's part of the Nature Conservancy's Freshwater Resilient and Connected Network. It's a tributary to the Connecticut and has mapped environmental justice communities and is just upstream from Springfield, Mass. We are working with the local Fort River Watershed Coalition to convene and identify their priority projects for high impact for holistic restoration of the watershed. And so this is a map from the Resilient River Explorer. It shows the Fort River watershed scores, the resilience scores. So you can see here, it's slightly above average for its water score, and average for condition and connectivity. So here we would think about the strategies we might want to prioritize. So since the physical score is only average, I'm going to click on that and see why. And so looking at the condition, we see that the overall watershed naturalness and the floodplain naturalness are the reason. So restoring habitat in the floodplain and throughout the watershed would be good actions for protecting, as well as protecting forested lands and forested wetlands from conversion. And then restoring stream and river connectivity is another restoration need for this watershed, particularly in the headwaters. So the functional connectivity is below average. Some of this has to do with the Holyoke Dam that's downstream on the Connecticut. And the headwater fragmentation is just average. So you can see the black dots are those dams. And at the same time, the Fort River Watershed Association is pursuing an assessment of their road stream crossings. Now, knowing from the Resilient River Explorer that we want to focus on restoring and protecting naturalness of the watershed and the floodplain, we've mapped the forest cover. Maximizing the upland and the wetland forest cover throughout the watershed is critical for water quality and freshwater habitat health and resilience. The watersheds are outlined in the dark black, the forests and forested wetlands, forested are in green, and the forested 100-year floodplains in the dark blue, so we can see where those areas are. And then, as I showed in that statewide version of the IPI, the locally protected streams, I wanted to know where they are here in this watershed. So the colored segments show how much of the land in their catchment and headwaters are protected. The orange being very limited and the dark green being 80 to 90%, so really in good shape. So when I overlay them with the protected lands, which are here in light green, and the land cover map, we start to see priority land protection catchments for the river health and resilience. So here in red is an orange segment. So you can see that is a very little land protection in that catchment. And here in the blue circle, you can see the green line, and this is almost, this area, this catchment's almost entirely protected. And in this light green segment is in a 60 to 80% catchment of protection. So the land protection efforts in the headwaters of that lighter green area would move it towards that fully protected integrated protection status. The orange section is a lot of opportunity to increase the resilience there. So we can significantly improve freshwater health by combining our land protection designed to improve our river and stream conservation, along with removing the dams and upgrading those road stream crossings to reconnect and restore our function of our streams. So this is this holistic watershed approach. I'm hoping this gives you some ideas on ways we can be working for biodiversity and restoration for people, wildlife, and fresh water. And that's it here. I'm going to put on a slide that gives all the information about where to go for the freshwater resilience data and tools. Everything's here at this one website, just crcs.tnc.org. And now I'm going to stop sharing and we can discuss.
Great, thanks so much, Barbara. So hopefully folks can take a look at the chat where some questions have been asked and Mark has started to answer some of them. Let me just point your attention to one that isn't yet answered related to, so how do you determine the temperature regime resilience for each reach of the rivers that you're analyzing?
Oh, that's Arlene's work. Go for it, Arlene.
Well, the temperature diversity is like it's actually a pretty small component of our overall diversity metric. But we did look at, we used 5 temperature classes from Ryan McManamay's work on stream classification, which these temperature classes are defined based on responses of different types of fish species. So for example, like 18 degrees C is a critical threshold for a certain group of types of cold water fish, 21 degrees for some cool water fish. Anyway, we looked at the diversity of these temperature classes within each functionally connected network, and then we weighted the cold temperatures more than the warm temperatures, since those are really limiting to a lot of the fish species. So,
Great.
Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Well, I'd encourage anybody to with other questions to put them in the chat. And I wonder, meanwhile, if Kate or Brewster who did put questions in the chat. If you had any follow-up based on the answers that you've heard from Mark or Arlene, were your questions fully answered? If not, feel free and unmute. And you see Arlene has added a bit to the chloride question.
Just thinking it might be correlated with the density of roads and land cover in that riparian zone. So we did integrate that into our riparian naturalness score.
Yeah, great. If anybody has, oh, here's another question about whether intermittent streams are accounted for in the mapping.
I mean, they are in there if they were part of the 1 to 100,000 scale NHD that we used, the base line work from the USGS. A lot of the streams out west were coded as intermittent, and probably a few in Massachusetts as well. The smallest, probably the smallest ones out here. Yeah.
Just checking to see if there's any follow-up, or do any of the presenters have any comments on each other's presentations, or anything that you want to touch on that wasn't fully covered?
There is a question in here. I don't know if it was answered with Mark's link there. Kate asked, are the average scores based on nationwide averages? Do you also have average data on a regional state level?
I think Mark did answer that. I don't know if you want to add anything to your chat answer about that, Mark.
Well, so we do have the scores and the averages calculated by freshwater ecoregion and terrestrial ecoregion, if you're interested in that. And then the ones we used mostly were calculated for the arid and humid regions of the country. And it's a longer explanation, but
one thing that might help, Mark, is can you just give us a sense of scale when you say TNC freshwater ecoregion? Like, how many are there in Massachusetts? Are there a lot?
Only one.
Only one.
The North
So these
Atlantic,
are
it's very large. No, it's
very large.
Yeah. So the ecoregions cross the North Atlantic drainages, eastern Canada through Chesapeake Bay, I think, that kind of area.
And this is a longer conversation, but freshwater ecoregions behave very differently than terrestrial ecoregions because they always have like an upper headwater area that's usually more intact and has more microclimates, and they always have a lower basin that is often more fragmented. So when we used the freshwater ecoregions, we weren't all that happy with the results because it's almost always comparing your lower valley to your upper mountains. Whereas the terrestrial ecoregions are much more homogeneous, and so we played around with both of them. And then we found that the differences, because the streams often cross states, we found that the differences worked better when we actually took the ecoregions out. So, but they're there if you want to explore that. It's a great question.
There's an additional question about how might this tool support water quality improvement efforts in communities that were not prioritized for restoration through the assessment?
Well, you can go into the data. If you remember, Arlene showed the additional metrics and the source data. You can go in there and look at the water quality data for anywhere. So that might help you think about what the water quality, it's modeled data based on cumulative properties. So, but it can be really helpful in just identifying areas,
It's actually really helpful, to look at that source sparrow data. It's a USGS model of phosphorus, nitrogen, suspended sediment, and it's at a fine catchment scale, much finer than our reporting units. So you check it out in the tool.
There is one final question. We are a little bit out of time, but if you have a real quick answer, the question is there funding available in Massachusetts to focus on redesign and replacement of narrow road bridges that are passing over disturbed narrow river areas? So sort of stream crossing issues. Dan Leahy added a little bit of info in the chat, but any comment on the funding for that kind of work?
Oh, Barbara might know that.
I don't know 100%. I mean, there is a small bridges program through Department of Mass DOT. I don't know if what's being referred to here would match up with that, but that would be one place to look.
Oh, Dan actually posed a question, which we may not have time to answer, about whether there's funding yeah, about the Army Corps.
Yeah, I can. I mean,
Go for
we
it,
are
Mark, and then we'll stop. Yeah.
we are working with the Army Corps through what we call the Sustainable Rivers Program, and they are interested in modifying the way they manage and their impoundments. And so, yes, there is a way that we might be able to work with them to focus on those flood control dams in the Westfield. So, good question.
So some of it's dam management, if not dam removal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of those big rivers, it's more dam management than removal.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, all three of you, for your excellent presentation. And for those of you tuned in, the PDFs will be made available of all three presentations. So stay tuned for those. And thank you all for joining us. Take care.